The blizzard hit Silver Reef, Utah territory with such sudden fury that Preston Vance barely saw the dark shape half buried in the snowdrift until his horse nearly stumbled over it. The year was 1878, and he had been riding through the worst winter storm he could remember in his 26 years, trying to reach the town before nightfall when he spotted what looked like a bundle of rags protruding from the white powder. His heart lurched when he realized those rags were moving, barely perceptible trembling that could only mean one thing. Someone was dying out here in this frozen wasteland. Preston threw himself from his horse, his boots sinking deep into snow that reached past his knees. The wind howled around him like a living thing trying to push him back, but he fought through it, dropping to his knees beside the drift. His gloved hands swept away the snow frantically, revealing first a dark woolen shawl, then the pale face of a young woman, her lips blue with cold, her dark lashes frosted with ice. She was unconscious but still breathing, though each breath came shallow and weak. "Hold on," he said, though she could not hear him. "Just hold on." He was a big man, strong from years of ranch work, and he lifted her from the snow as easily as if she weighed nothing at all. Her body was rigid with cold, and terror gripped him that he might already be too late. But there was warmth still in her, a flicker of life that refused to be extinguished. He wrapped his heavy coat around her, pressing her against his chest, then somehow managed to mount his horse while holding her. The animal, a steady gelding named Ranger, seemed to understand the urgency and began moving through the storm without urging. The ride to Silver Reef took an eternity, though it could not have been more than 15 minutes. Preston kept talking to the woman in his arms, nonsense mostly, anything to keep himself focused and to will warmth back into her frozen body. He told her about the ranch, about his cattle, about how spring would come and melt all this cursed snow. Her head lolled against his shoulder, and he tightened his grip, terrified she might slip away. The lights of Silver Reef appeared like salvation through the swirling white. The town was small, built up around the silver mines that gave it its name, but it had a doctor, and that was all Preston cared about right now. He rode straight to Dr. Morrison's house, a neat clapboard building on the main street, and began shouting before he even dismounted. Dr. Morrison, a thin man with spectacles and graying hair, opened his door with an expression of alarm that deepened when he saw what Preston carried. "Bring her inside, quickly now." They brought her into the warm parlor where a fire crackled in the hearth. Preston laid her on the settee as gently as he could while the doctor began his examination, feeling for her pulse, listening to her breathing, checking her extremities for frostbite. "You found her in the storm?" the doctor asked, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. "In a snowdrift about 3 miles out. She was nearly covered. Lucky you came along when you did. Another hour and she would have been gone." Dr. Morrison looked up, his expression grave but not without hope. "Help me get these wet clothes off her. We need to warm her slowly, not too fast, or we will shock her system." Preston helped, averting his eyes as much as possible to preserve the young woman's modesty, though survival mattered more than propriety right now. The doctor's wife appeared, a plump woman named Martha who made soothing noises and brought blankets and hot water bottles. They wrapped the young woman in layers of wool, positioned her near the fire but not too close, and Martha began preparing warm broth. "Will she live?" Preston asked, unable to keep the anxiety from his voice. "I believe so," the doctor said. "You got her here in time. Now we wait for her to wake and warm up naturally. It will take hours." Preston should have left then. He had done his part, saved a life, and the decent thing would be to return to his ranch and his responsibilities. But he found himself unable to walk out that door. Something held him there in the doctor's parlor, standing near the settee, watching the pale face of the young woman he had pulled from death's grasp. "You can go," Dr. Morrison said gently. "I will send word when she wakes. I would like to stay if you do not mind, just until she wakes. I want to know she is all right." The doctor exchanged a glance with his wife, and something passed between them, some understanding. Martha smiled. "Of course you can stay, Preston. I will bring you some coffee." So Preston settled into a chair by the fire, cradling a cup of hot coffee between his hands, and watched the young woman breathe. Color was returning to her cheeks gradually, the blue tinge fading from her lips. Her hair had dried in the warmth, spreading across the pillow in waves of deep chestnut brown. She looked young, perhaps 20 or 21, with fine features and a small, straight nose. There was something delicate about her, yet the fact that she had survived as long as she did in that storm spoke of an inner strength. Hours passed. The storm continued to rage outside, rattling the windows, but inside all was warm and still. Preston dozed in his chair, waking periodically to check on the woman, to see the steady rise and fall of her breathing. Dr. Morrison checked on her regularly, nodding with satisfaction each time. It was near midnight when she finally stirred. Preston was awake instantly, leaning forward as her eyelids fluttered. They opened slowly, revealing eyes of the deepest brown he had ever seen, confused and frightened. "Where am I?" Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "You are safe," Preston said quickly. "In Silver Reef at the doctor's house. I found you in the snow." She blinked at him, trying to focus, and he saw the moment memory returned, saw her face crumple with some terrible knowledge. "The wagon," she whispered. "The horses bolted. I fell out. My father, he was driving. He went after the horses and told me to stay put, but he never came back. I started walking, trying to find help, and then I could not walk anymore." "The storm came up fast," Preston said. "I am sure your father found shelter." But even as he said it, he knew it was likely a lie, knew that anyone caught unprepared in that blizzard would not have survived. The young woman knew it too. He saw it in her eyes, the dawning horror of loss. Dr. Morrison came in then, drawn by the sound of voices. "Ah, you are awake. Good. How do you feel?" "Cold still, tired. My fingers hurt." "That is a good sign. Means the blood is flowing again. You are very lucky, young lady. This man saved your life." The doctor gestured to Preston. She turned those brown eyes on him again, and Preston felt something shift in his chest, like a key turning in a lock. "Thank you," she said. "I owe you my life." "No debt," Preston replied. "Any decent man would have done the same." "What is your name?" she asked. "Preston Vance." "I have a ranch west of town." "I am Olivia Mercer," she said. "From Colorado. We were traveling through, heading to California. My father had plans to start fresh there." She paused, her voice breaking. "We should have waited out the storm in the last town, but he wanted to make good time. He said we would beat it." Preston glanced at Dr. Morrison, who gave a slight shake of his head. The message was clear. They needed to find out what had happened to her father, but not tonight, not while she was still recovering. Tonight she needed rest and warmth and the knowledge that she was safe. "You need to sleep now," the doctor said kindly. "We will sort everything out in the morning. Mrs. Morrison has prepared a proper bed for you upstairs." Olivia tried to sit up and immediately winced, her body still stiff and aching from the cold. Preston moved without thinking, sliding an arm behind her shoulders to support her. She looked up at him, and he was struck again by how lovely she was, even with her face still pale and drawn from her ordeal. "I can walk," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "No need to prove anything," Preston replied. "Let me help you." With the doctor's assistance, They got Olivia upstairs to a small bedroom where Martha Morrison had laid out a warm nightgown and piled the bed high with quilts. Martha shooed the men away and helped Olivia change and settle into bed. Preston found himself reluctant to leave the house, but there was nothing more he could do here tonight. "Come back in the morning," Dr. Morrison said. "We will need to organize a search party for her father." Preston nodded. "I will be here at first light." The ride back to his ranch was brutal, the storm still raging, but Preston barely noticed. His mind was full of Olivia Mercer, of her brown eyes and her quiet courage, of the way she had looked at him with such gratitude. He told himself it was natural to feel invested in someone whose life you had saved, but it felt like more than that, felt like something had been set in motion that could not be stopped. He reached his ranch house, a solid structure he had built with his own hands 3 years ago, and bedded down Ranger in the barn before stumbling inside. The fire had burned down to embers, and the house was cold, but Preston was too exhausted to care. He stripped off his frozen clothes and collapsed into bed, asleep almost before his head hit the pillow. He dreamed of brown eyes and snowstorms, of reaching into drifts and finding nothing but more snow, of panic and loss. He woke before dawn, disoriented and anxious, and dressed quickly in fresh clothes. The storm had finally blown itself out, leaving behind a world transformed, everything buried under feet of pristine white. Preston rode back to Silver Reef as the sun rose, painting the snow gold and pink. The town was already stirring, people digging out from the blizzard, checking on neighbors, assessing damage. He went straight to the doctor's house and found Morrison already up and dressed, sipping coffee in his kitchen. "How is she?" Preston asked. "Better. She slept well." "Her color is good, no signs of frostbite. She was very fortunate." The doctor paused. "She has been asking about her father. We need to search. I have already spoken to Sheriff Davis. He is gathering men now. We will start at the place where you found Miss Mercer and work outward from there." Preston joined the search party. 8 men total, including the sheriff, all mounted and carrying supplies. Olivia had been able to describe roughly where their wagon had been when the horses bolted, and Preston led them to where he had found her. From there they spread out, calling and searching, looking for any sign of a wagon, horses, or a man. They found the wagon first, overturned in a gully, half buried in snow. The horses were gone, likely run off or dead somewhere. There was no sign of Olivia's father near the wagon. They searched in widening circles, checking every drift, every depression, every place a man might have taken shelter. It was Preston who found him, nearly a mile from the wagon. The body was frozen solid, half covered in snow, one hand outstretched as if reaching for something. He had died trying to get back to his daughter, died alone in the howling storm. Preston felt a deep sadness settle over him as he looked down at the dead man's face, peaceful in death, forever frozen in his final moment. They brought the body back to Silver Reef, wrapped in canvas, and took it to the undertaker. Then came the hard part. Someone had to tell Olivia. Preston volunteered before he even thought about it, knew somehow that the news should come from him. He found her downstairs in the doctor's parlor, dressed in borrowed clothes that were too large for her slender frame. She looked better, the color fully returned to her cheeks, her hair brushed and pinned. She stood when he entered, and he saw in her eyes that she already knew, had read the truth in his expression. "He is dead," she said flatly, not a question. "Yes, I am so sorry. We found him about a mile from where the wagon crashed. It would have been quick. He would not have suffered long." Olivia sat down heavily, her hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. "He was all I had. My mother died 2 years ago. It was just the two of us." Preston sat beside her, feeling helpless, What could he say that would ease this kind of loss? He died trying to get back to you. He loved you. I know. Her voice was very small. What am I going to do now? I have nothing. No family, no money. Everything we owned was in that wagon, and it is all ruined or lost. Preston looked at this young woman, orphaned and alone in a strange town, and felt something crystallize in his chest, a decision made without conscious thought. You have more than you think, he said quietly. She turned to look at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I have nothing. You have my heart, Preston replied, the words coming from somewhere deep inside him, truer than anything he had ever said. If you will let me help you, I will. You are not alone, not anymore. Olivia stared at him, and he saw shock flicker across her face, followed by confusion and something else, something that might have been hope. You do not even know me. Why would you say such a thing? I cannot explain it, Preston admitted. But from the moment I pulled you out of that snow, I felt something. Like I had been looking for you my whole life without knowing it. I know it sounds crazy. I know you are grieving. I am not asking for anything right now, just let me help you. You need somewhere to stay, someone to look after you. My ranch has plenty of room, and Mrs. Davis, the sheriff's wife, is looking for work. She could stay with you as a chaperone, keep everything proper. I could not impose, Olivia said, but her voice wavered. It is not an imposition. Please, let me do this. She looked at him for a long moment, and he saw her weighing her options, saw her realize how few she had. All right, she said finally. But only until I can figure out what to do, where to go. I will not be a burden on you. You could never be a burden, Preston said, and meant it. They buried Olivia's father 2 days later in the Silver Reef cemetery, a simple service attended by the doctor and his wife, the sheriff and his wife, Preston, and a handful of townspeople who came out of respect for the dead. Olivia stood at the graveside in a black dress Mrs. Morrison had found for her, her face pale but composed. She did not cry, but Preston saw the way her hands trembled and how she held herself rigid, as if afraid she might shatter. After the service, Preston took her to his ranch. The ride was quiet but not uncomfortable. Olivia seemed lost in her thoughts, gazing out at the snow-covered landscape. Mrs. Davis, a cheerful woman in her 40s, had already moved into the spare bedroom and had prepared a room for Olivia, making everything as welcoming as possible. The ranch house was modest but well built, with a large main room dominated by a stone fireplace, a kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a loft. Preston had offered Olivia his bedroom and moved his things to the loft, wanting her to have privacy and comfort. She had protested, but he insisted. This is your home now for as long as you need it, he told her. I want you to feel safe here. She looked around the room, at the neat bed with its colorful quilt, at the simple furniture and the window that looked out over the snowy valley. It is lovely, she said softly. Thank you, Preston, for everything. Those first weeks were strange and wonderful. Preston went about his usual work, tending to his cattle, repairing fences, chopping wood, but always he was aware of Olivia's presence in his house. She was quiet at first, grieving and uncertain, but gradually she began to emerge from her shell. She helped Mrs. Davis with the cooking and cleaning, insisting she needed to earn her keep. She had a lovely voice, and sometimes Preston would hear her singing as she worked, old ballads and folk songs that made his chest ache. They ate their meals together, the 3 of them, and conversation gradually became easier. Olivia told them about her childhood in Colorado, about her mother who had died of pneumonia, about her father's dream of starting fresh in California. Preston talked about his ranch, his plans to expand his herd, his love for this wild, beautiful country. Mrs. Davis kept things lively with local gossip and funny stories about the town. But it was the evenings Preston treasured most, after Mrs. Davis had retired to her room. He and Olivia would sit by the fire, sometimes talking, sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. He learned that she loved to read, that she was educated beyond what was common for women, that her father had believed strongly in learning. Preston dug out the few books he owned, and she devoured them, then began borrowing from Dr. Morrison's extensive library. One evening, about 3 weeks after she had arrived, Olivia looked up from her book and found Preston watching her. "What is it?" she asked. "I was just thinking how right it feels, you being here," he admitted. "Like this house was waiting for you." She closed her book, marking her place with a finger. "Preston, about what you said that first day, did you mean it? About me having your heart?" His own heart began to pound. "Every word." "I have been thinking about it," she said slowly. "I told myself I should not, that it was too soon after my father's death, that I needed to focus on practical matters. But I cannot help it. I think about you all the time, about how you saved me, yes, but more than that, about your kindness, your patience. The way you look at me sometimes, like I am something precious." Preston set aside the harness he had been mending and moved to sit beside her on the settee. "You are precious. To me, you are everything." "How can you be so sure?" she asked. "We have known each other such a short time." "Time does not matter. I knew the moment I saw your face in that snowdrift that you were going to change my life. I knew when you woke up and looked at me with those eyes. I knew every moment since. I love you, Olivia. I know I should probably wait to say it, court you properly, but I have never been good at pretending. I love you and I want you to stay here forever, not as my guest but as my wife." Olivia drew in a sharp breath. "Preston, you do not have to answer now," he said quickly. "I know you need time. I just needed you to know how I feel." "I do not need time," she said, and her voice was steady, sure. "I love you too. I think I started falling in love with you when I woke up and you were there watching over me. Every day since I have fallen a little more. Yes, I will marry you. Yes, I want to stay here forever." Preston felt joy surge through him, so intense it was almost painful. He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers, and she squeezed back. "I will make you happy," he promised. "I will spend every day of my life making sure you never regret this." "I know," she said simply. "I trust you." He wanted to kiss her then, wanted it more than he had ever wanted anything, but he held back. There would be time for that once they were properly engaged, once he had done everything right. He was old-fashioned that way, believed in honor and propriety, especially when it came to the woman he loved. The next day, he rode into Silver Reef and went to the general store, where he knew the proprietor kept a small selection of jewelry. He spent nearly everything he had saved on a simple gold ring set with a small garnet, the only stone they had. It was not much, but when he presented it to Olivia that evening, she cried and said it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. They were married 4 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Silver Reef. Olivia wore a dress Mrs. Morrison had helped her make from fabric Preston had bought, a simple design in pale blue that made her eyes look like polished wood. Preston wore his best suit, his hair slicked back, his hands trembling as he slipped the ring onto her finger. When the preacher said he could kiss his bride, Preston cupped Olivia's face in his hands and kissed her softly, tenderly, sealing their vows. The townspeople had chipped in for a celebration at the hotel, modest but heartfelt. There was food and music, and Preston danced with his wife, holding her close, still unable to believe his good fortune. She smiled up at him, radiant with happiness, and he knew he would remember this moment for the rest of his life. They returned to the ranch as the sun was setting, painting the snow-covered valley in shades of gold and rose. Mrs. Davis had tactfully decided to spend a few days with her sister, giving the newlyweds privacy. Preston carried Olivia over the threshold, and she laughed, the sound like music. That night, they came together as husband and wife, tender and nervous and full of wonder. Preston had been with women before, but never like this, never with someone he loved so completely. Olivia was inexperienced but eager and trusting, and he tried to be gentle to make it good for her. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed, her head on his chest, his arms around her. "I never thought I could be this happy," Olivia murmured. "After losing my parents, I thought happiness was done for me. But here I am, in the arms of the man I love in our home. It feels like a dream." "If it is a dream, I do not want to wake up," Preston replied, pressing a kiss to her hair. "You are my miracle, Olivia. My second chance. I was getting by before you, existing but not really living. Now everything is brighter, better. You make me want to be the best man I can be." She lifted her head to look at him, her eyes soft in the lamplight. "You already are the best man. You have been nothing but good to me from the moment you found me. I am the lucky one." "We are both lucky," he said, and kissed her again. Spring came slowly to Utah Territory that year, the snow melting gradually, revealing the brown earth beneath. Preston threw himself into the work of the ranch with renewed energy, expanding his herd, repairing winter damage, preparing for the busy season ahead. Olivia worked beside him as much as he would let her, insisting she was a rancher's wife now and needed to learn the business. She proved to be a quick study, unafraid of hard work. She learned to care for the cattle, to recognize signs of illness, to help with the branding. She could ride well, having learned as a girl, and Preston often saw her galloping across the valley on the mare he had bought her, her hair streaming behind her, looking wild and free and beautiful. But it was the quiet moments he treasured most. Mornings when they woke wrapped around each other, exchanging lazy kisses before the day began. Evenings on the porch, watching the sunset, her hand in his. Nights when they made love, learning each other's bodies, growing more confident and adventurous. They talked about everything, about their pasts, their dreams for the future, their hopes and fears. By summer, Olivia suspected she was pregnant. She waited until she was sure before telling Preston, one evening as they sat on the porch watching the stars come out. "I have news," she said, trying to sound casual but unable to keep the excitement from her voice. "What news?" He looked at her, curious. "I am going to have a baby. We are going to have a baby." Preston stared at her, and for a moment he could not speak. Then he was on his feet, sweeping her into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed and protested. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are going to have a baby." "Yes," she confirmed, her face glowing with joy. "In the winter, I think, around February." He set her down carefully, as if she might break, his hands on her belly. "I am going to be a father. You are going to be a mother. There is going to be a tiny person who is part both of us." "Are you happy?" she asked, though she could see the answer in his face. "Happy does not begin to cover it," he said. "Thrilled, terrified, overjoyed, all of it at once." He insisted she take it easier after that, worried about her overworking, but Olivia refused to be treated like an invalid. She continued with her chores, though Preston took over the heavier work. Her belly grew gradually, and Preston found himself constantly amazed by the changes in her body, the visible proof of the life they had created together. They spent the summer and fall preparing, turning the small spare bedroom into a nursery, building a cradle from wood Preston had been saving for something special. Olivia sewed baby clothes and blankets, her hands constantly busy. They debated names endlessly, laughing over the ridiculous ones, considering the traditional ones, trying to find something that felt right. "If it is a boy, I would like to name him after your father," Preston said one evening, "if you would be comfortable with that." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. That would be wonderful. His name was Thomas. Thomas Vance, I like it. And if it is a girl, she asked, you choose. Whatever name you love, I will love too. Winter returned, cold and harsh but beautiful in its own way. Olivia grew large and uncomfortable, but she never complained. Preston hovered, anxious and protective, until she finally told him to stop treating her like she was made of glass. On a cold February night with snow falling gently outside, Olivia went into labor. Preston rode like a madman to fetch Dr. Morrison, then paced the house while the doctor and Mrs. Morrison attended to Olivia. The hours dragged, filled with sounds that made Preston want to break down the door and somehow take her pain away. But this was something he could not fix, could only wait and pray. Finally, as dawn was breaking, he heard it. The thin, angry cry of a newborn. His legs nearly gave out with relief. Mrs. Morrison appeared in the doorway, smiling. "Congratulations, Preston. You have a son." He rushed into the bedroom where Dr. Morrison was cleaning up and Olivia lay propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. She looked up as he entered, and her smile was brilliant. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Preston approached almost shyly, looking down at the tiny red face peeking out of the blanket. The baby had stopped crying and was looking around with dark, unfocused eyes. He was perfect. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, a soft down of dark hair on his head. "Hello, Thomas," Preston whispered, reaching out to touch one small hand. The baby's fingers curled around his immediately, gripping with surprising strength. "I am your father, and I promise to protect you and love you every day of your life." "He looks like you," Olivia said. "Same nose, same chin." "He has your eyes," Preston replied. "Or he will when they settle. Can I hold him?" Olivia passed the baby over and Preston cradled his son carefully, terrified and awed in equal measure. Thomas squirmed and made a little sound, and Preston's heart expanded in his chest, making room for this new, overwhelming love. The months that followed were exhausting and wonderful. Neither of them had much experience with babies, so they learned together, stumbling through feedings and diaper changes and sleepless nights. But every challenge was worth it for the moments when Thomas smiled, when he laughed, when he reached for them with his little hands. Preston had never imagined he could love anything as much as he loved Olivia, but his son came close, a different kind of love but equally powerful. He would watch Olivia nursing Thomas, the two of them peaceful in the lamplight, and feel such contentment it was almost painful. This was everything he had ever wanted, everything he had not known to hope for. A family. A home. Love. Thomas grew quickly as babies do, becoming more alert and interactive. By spring, he was crawling, getting into everything, keeping them both constantly busy. The ranch thrived too, the herd multiplying, the profits growing. Preston hired a couple of hands to help with the work, giving him more time with his family. On a warm evening in early summer, as they sat on the porch watching Thomas play with wooden blocks Preston had carved, Olivia leaned her head on her husband's shoulder. "Do you ever think about that day in the snow?" she asked. "How different things could have been." "Sometimes," Preston admitted. "If I had ridden a different direction, if I had been even a few minutes later, I would never have found you. We would never have had this life together, would never have had Thomas. It terrifies me to think about." "I think we were meant to find each other," Olivia said. "I think everything that happened, as terrible as it was, led us to exactly where we needed to be. I lost my father, and I will always grieve that loss. But I gained you, and our son, and this beautiful life. I like to think my father would be happy for me, knowing I am loved and safe." "He would be proud of you," Preston said. Of the woman you are, the mother you have become. You are strong and brave and so full of love. I am the luckiest man alive to call you my wife." Thomas chose that moment to tumble over, letting out an indignant wail. They both laughed, and Olivia scooped him up, soothing him with soft words and kisses. Preston watched them, his heart full to bursting, and sent up a silent prayer of thanks to whatever force had led him into that snowstorm, to that drift, to the woman who had become his whole world. The years rolled on, each one bringing new joys and challenges. When Thomas was 3, Olivia became pregnant again. This time she gave birth to a daughter, Emma, with Olivia's brown eyes and a temperament as sunny as a summer day. 2 years later came another boy, Samuel, who looked like neither of them but somehow perfectly combined their features. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Preston bought more land, expanded the house to accommodate their growing family, hired more hands. He became known throughout the territory as a fair and honest rancher, a good man to do business with. Olivia became involved in the community, helping to establish a school in Silver Reef, organizing charity drives for families in need. But no matter how busy their lives became, they always made time for each other. Date nights when Mrs. Davis would watch the children, and they would ride out to their favorite spot overlooking the valley. Quiet mornings before the children woke, wrapped in each other's arms. Stolen kisses in the barn, the kitchen, anywhere they could grab a moment alone. Thomas grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved animals and spent hours helping his father with the cattle. Emma was wild and fearless, climbing trees and riding horses as soon as she could sit a saddle. Samuel was the charmer, always laughing, always getting into mischief, able to talk his way out of trouble with a dimpled smile. One evening, when Thomas was 12 and Emma 9 and Samuel 7, the family gathered around the dinner table as they did every night. It was Preston's favorite time of day, all of them together, sharing food and stories and laughter. He looked around at his family, at Olivia at the other end of the table, still as beautiful to him as the day he married her, at his children with their bright faces and endless energy, and felt the familiar swell of gratitude. After dinner, when the children had been sent to do their chores, Olivia found Preston in his study, going over the ranch accounts. She came up behind him and wrapped her arms around his shoulders, resting her chin on top of his head. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How fast time goes," he replied, setting down his pen and turning to pull her into his lap. "How our babies are not babies anymore. How you have more gray in your hair than you did last year." "You have more gray too," she pointed out, running her fingers through his hair. "We are getting old." "Not old, seasoned, distinguished," he smiled at her. "Honestly, I do not mind. Every year with you is better than the last. I look at you and I still see the girl I pulled from the snow, but I also see the woman you have become, and I fall in love with you all over again." "Smooth talker," she teased, but her eyes were soft. "You know, I was thinking about that day too. It was 15 years ago this past winter. 15 years since you found me, since you saved my life." "You saved mine too," Preston said seriously. "Maybe not literally, but you gave me a reason to live beyond just getting by day to day. You gave me purpose and joy and a family. You are my heart, Olivia. You always have been from that first moment." She kissed him then, slow and deep, and he responded with the passion that had never faded between them. They might be older, might have responsibilities and worries and aching joints, but this fire still burned as hot as ever. "You remember what I said that first day?" Olivia asked when they finally broke apart. "When I said I had nothing." "Yes, and I told you that you had my heart." "You were right," she said. "I had everything I needed, I just did not know it yet." Your heart was the greatest gift I ever received, and I've tried every day since to be worthy of it." "You are," Preston said firmly. "You are and always have been. I cannot imagine my life without you. I do not want to." "Good," Olivia said, settling more comfortably against him. "Because you are stuck with me. Forever." "Forever is not long enough," Preston replied, holding her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. The children grew older, as children do. Thomas became a fine rancher, learning everything Preston could teach him. At 18, he started courting a girl from town, a sweet-natured blonde named Alice who fit right into their family. Emma, at 15, was already breaking hearts, though she seemed far more interested in horses than boys. Samuel, at 13, was still figuring out who he wanted to be, trying on different interests like hats. Preston and Olivia watched their children grow with pride and a touch of melancholy, knowing that soon they would start their own families, their own lives. But they also knew that the foundation they had built here, the home they had created, would always be the center, the place their children would return to. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Preston took Olivia back to the place where he had found her in the snow. It was summer now, the meadow green and dotted with wildflowers, almost impossible to believe that it had once been a frozen wasteland. They stood together, hand in hand, looking out over the valley. "I think about her sometimes," Olivia said softly. "The girl I was before. Scared and alone, thinking her life was over. I wish I could go back and tell her that everything was going to be all right, better than all right, that she was about to meet the love of her life." "I think about the man I was too," Preston replied. "Going through the motions, thinking that ranch work and survival were enough. I did not know what I was missing until I found you. You transformed my life, Olivia. You made it worth living." "We transformed each other," she said, turning to face him. "We built this life together. Everything we have, we made from nothing but determination and love. I am so grateful for every moment, even the hard ones, because they brought us here." Preston pulled her close, holding her the way he had that first night, when she was half frozen and barely alive. But now she was warm and strong and wholly his as he was hers. "I love you," he said simply. "I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "I love you too," Olivia replied. "Always." They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, two people who had found each other in the midst of a storm and built something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy. Around them, the valley spread out green and gold, their ranch visible in the distance, smoke rising from the chimney where their children were waiting. It was everything. It was enough. It was home. The years continued to pass, marked by birthdays and holidays, by births and weddings and all the small moments that make up a life. Thomas married Alice, and they had 3 children, giving Preston and Olivia the joy of grandchildren. Emma eventually married a schoolteacher from Salt Lake City, a quiet man who adored her wild spirit. Samuel took longer to settle, traveling for a few years, before returning to the ranch and asking his father to make him a partner in the business. Preston and Olivia grew older together, their bodies slowing but their love never diminishing. They became fixtures in Silver Reef, the couple everyone pointed to as an example of true love. People told stories about how they met, about how Preston had pulled Olivia from a snowdrift and declared his love almost immediately, about how she had nothing and he had told her she had his heart. On their 40th anniversary, their children and grandchildren threw them a celebration at the ranch, a huge party with food and music and dancing. Preston was 66 now, his hair completely white, his face lined by sun and age. Olivia was 61, still beautiful to him, still the girl he had saved, still the love of his life. As the sun set over the valley, turning the sky orange and pink, Preston led Olivia onto the porch and took her in his arms, swaying to the music drifting from inside. Their children and grandchildren watched, smiling, understanding that they were witnessing something rare and precious. 40 years, Olivia said, resting her head on his shoulder. It feels like a lifetime and also like no time at all. Best 40 years of my life, Preston replied. Every single day with you has been a gift. Do you have any regrets? She asked. He thought about it, seriously considering the question. No, he said finally. How could I? Everything I did, every choice I made led me to that moment in the snow when I found you. If I changed anything, I might not have been there at that exact moment. I might have lost you. So no regrets. Only gratitude. Me too, Olivia said. Though sometimes I wonder about my father, about what he would think if he could see us now, see the life we built, the family we raised. He would be proud, Preston assured her. He gave his life trying to protect you. Knowing you are happy, loved, safe, that would be everything to him. They danced a while longer, lost in their own world, surrounded by family but aware only of each other. Later, after the guests had gone home and the grandchildren had been put to bed, they sat together on the porch as they had done thousands of times before, watching the stars come out. Tell me the story again, Olivia said, though she knew it by heart. Preston smiled. He knew which story she meant. It was the worst storm I had ever seen, he began. The snow was so thick I could barely see Ranger's ears. I thought about turning back, finding shelter, but something pushed me forward. Then I saw it, just a dark shape in the snow. At first I thought it was a log or a rock, but then it moved. I was so cold, Olivia interjected. I had stopped feeling my body. I was just drifting, thinking about my mother, about my father. I had given up. But you held on, Preston continued. You fought. When I dug you out and saw your face, I felt something shift inside me. I knew right then, even though you were unconscious, that you were important, that I had to save you. And you did, Olivia said. You rode through that terrible storm, kept me warm, got me to safety. You saved my life. You saved mine too, Preston reminded her. You gave me a reason to live beyond just existing. You gave me love and purpose and a family. Everything good in my life came from that moment in the snow. When I woke up and saw you watching over me, I felt safe for the first time since my mother died, Olivia said. And when I told you I had nothing, you said, "You have my heart," Preston finished. And I meant it. You had it from that first moment, though I did not fully understand it yet. You have had it every day since. And you have mine, Olivia said, taking his hand, forever and always. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the night sky, thinking about the long road that had brought them here. It had not always been easy. There had been hard years, droughts and diseases that decimated the herd, winters when money was tight and worry kept them up at night. There had been fights, disagreements, moments when they were too tired or stressed to be kind to each other. But through it all, the love had remained, the bedrock on which everything else was built. I hope when it is my time to go, I go first, Preston said suddenly. I do not think I could bear to live in a world without you in it. Do not talk like that, Olivia scolded gently. We have many years left, I know. I just wanted you to know. You are my everything, Olivia, my heart, my soul, my reason for breathing. Whatever time we have left, I will treasure every moment. As will I, she promised. They continued their life together, cherishing the time they had. Preston taught his grandsons to rope and ride, passing on the skills he had learned over a lifetime. Olivia taught her granddaughters to sew and cook, telling them stories about the old days. Together, they watched their family grow and flourish, each generation building on what had come before. Preston's health began to fail when he was 72. His heart was weak, the doctor said, worn out from a lifetime of hard work. He slowed down, no longer able to do the heavy ranch work, but he still rose every morning and went out to check on the cattle, to be part of the operation he had built from nothing. Olivia was with him every step, adapting their life to his limitations, making sure he took his medicine, did not overexert himself. She was terrified of losing him, of facing life alone after 46 years of marriage. But she kept those fears to herself, focusing instead on making every day count. On a spring morning, unusually warm for April, Preston woke before dawn as he always did. Olivia stirred beside him, and he turned to look at her, her face soft with sleep, her gray hair spread across the pillow. She was still the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "I love you," he whispered, not wanting to wake her but needing to say it. Her eyes opened and she smiled at him, that same brilliant smile that had stolen his heart all those years ago. "I love you too. How are you feeling?" "Good," he said, and meant it. The pain in his chest that had been his constant companion lately was gone. He felt light, peaceful, ready for whatever the day brought. They rose and dressed, moving through their morning routine with the ease of long practice. Olivia made coffee while Preston went out to the porch to watch the sunrise. The valley spread out before him, green with new growth, his cattle grazing peacefully. Thomas was running the ranch now, doing a fine job of it, but Preston still liked to keep an eye on things. Olivia joined him with 2 cups of coffee, and they sat together in the chairs they had occupied for decades. "Beautiful morning," she observed. "Perfect," Preston agreed. "I want to ride out to the meadow today, the one where I found you." Olivia looked at him with concern. "Are you sure?" "It is a long ride." "I know, but I want to go. I need to. Will you come with me?" She could not refuse him, though worry gnawed at her. They saddled horses after breakfast, moving slowly, and set out across the valley. It took longer than it used to, Preston tiring easily, but finally they reached the meadow, lush with wildflowers and grass. They dismounted and stood together, looking out over the landscape. "Right there," Preston said, pointing. "That is where you were. That is where our life together began." "It seems so long ago," Olivia said. "Another lifetime." "The best lifetime," Preston replied. He turned to her, taking both her hands in his. "Olivia, I need to tell you something. I need to tell you again, one more time, how much I love you. How grateful I am that I found you, that you chose me, that we had this incredible life together. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You are my heart." "Preston, you are scaring me," Olivia said, tears filling her eyes. "Why does this feel like goodbye?" "I do not know," he admitted. "Maybe it is. But if it is, I want you to know that I am ready. I have had the most wonderful life, more than I ever deserved. I got to love you and be loved by you. I got to raise our children and meet our grandchildren. I have no regrets, no wishes for anything different. If this is my last day, I am content." "Do not say that," Olivia pleaded. "You are fine, we have years left." But even as she said it, she saw him sway slightly, saw him press a hand to his chest. "Preston, I love you," he said, his voice urgent. "Remember that. No matter what happens, remember that you were loved completely and absolutely. You have my heart, Olivia. You always have. You always will." Then his eyes rolled back and he collapsed, and Olivia screamed, catching him, lowering him to the ground. "Preston! No, please, no." His eyes opened one more time, focused on her face. He smiled, peaceful and content, and whispered, "My miracle." Then he was gone, his last breath released in a sigh, his hand going limp in hers. Olivia held him, rocking back and forth, keening her grief to the uncaring sky. The man who had saved her, who had loved her, who had given her everything, was gone. The world felt emptied out, hollow, like all the light had been extinguished. But even through her grief, She knew he had been right. They had been blessed with something rare and precious. Their love had been the kind people wrote songs about, told stories about. It had sustained them through everything, had been the foundation of an incredible life. She stayed there for a long time, holding him, saying goodbye. Finally, she rode back to the ranch to tell their children, to begin the process of laying her beloved husband to rest. The funeral was huge, the whole town turning out to pay their respects. Thomas gave a beautiful eulogy about the father who had taught him everything, who had built something from nothing, who had loved his family above all else. They buried Preston on the ranch, on a hill overlooking the valley he had loved. Olivia stood at his grave, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, and placed a single wildflower from the meadow where they had met on the fresh earth. "I will love you forever," she whispered. "Thank you for everything. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for the life we built together. I will see you again, my love. Wait for me." Olivia lived for 6 more years without Preston, busy years filled with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, with the daily operations of the ranch, with the community she had helped build. But everyone who knew her could see that a part of her had gone with Preston, that she was just waiting for the day when she could join him. When she finally died peacefully in her sleep at 73, her children found a letter she had written years before, to be opened upon her death. In it, she told the story of how she and Preston had met, of how he had pulled her from a snowdrift and given her a reason to live. She wrote about their love, about the life they had built, about the family they had raised. She ended with these words: "I have lived a blessed life, far beyond anything I could have imagined when I was a scared, orphaned girl with nothing but grief. Preston gave me everything. He gave me love and home and family. He gave me his heart, and I gave him mine in return. Now I go to join him, content and grateful, knowing that our love will endure beyond death, beyond time, beyond everything. Tell your children our story. Tell them that true love exists, that it is worth fighting for, worth treasuring. Tell them that sometimes, in the darkest moments when you think you have nothing, someone can come along and show you that love is everything. That is what Preston showed me. That is the gift he gave me, and I carry it with me, even into death." They buried Olivia next to Preston on the hill overlooking the valley, and the family placed 2 stones side by side, identical except for the names and dates. Beneath both names were carved the same words: "Forever loved, forever together." The ranch continued, passed down through the generations, each one adding to it, building on what Preston and Olivia had started. Their great-great-grandchildren still live there, still work the land, still tell the story of the cowboy who found a girl in a snowdrift and loved her for the rest of his life. The house still stands, expanded and updated, but still the same at its core. The porch where Preston and Olivia sat every evening is still there, and on quiet nights, people swear they can see 2 figures sitting in the old chairs, holding hands, watching the stars. It is just a story, of course, just wishful thinking. But the family likes to believe it is true, likes to think that the love Preston and Olivia shared was so powerful it left an imprint on the land itself. The town of Silver Reef changed over the years, growing and shrinking with the economy, surviving fires and floods and all the challenges that come with time. But it never forgot the couple who helped build it, who contributed so much to the community. There is a plaque in the town square telling their story, and every year on Valentine's Day, people leave flowers there in honor of a love that transcended everything. The story has been told and retold, passed down through generations, romanticized and embellished, but always holding the same core truth. A cowboy found a girl dying in the snow. He saved her life. She told him she had nothing. He replied that she had his heart. From that simple, extraordinary beginning, they built a life together that became legendary. Their love was not perfect. It was not without challenges or hardships or moments of doubt. But it was real, and it endured, and it mattered. It created a family that spread out across the country, dozens of descendants who all carry a piece of Preston and Olivia within them. It created a legacy that goes beyond land and money, a legacy of love and commitment and the belief that two people can find each other even in the darkest of circumstances. Years became decades, and decades became a century, and still the story persisted. Still people visited the graves on the hill. Still couples came to the meadow where Preston had found Olivia, believing that such a place must be touched by magic, must hold some special power to bless new love. The valley changed too, as all places do. Where once there were only cattle and wild grass, now there are houses and roads and all the trappings of modern life. But the ranch remains, still owned by the Vance family, still operated much as Preston had operated it, with respect for the land and the animals and the legacy they inherited. On a spring day very much like the day Preston died, his great-great-great-grandson stood in the meadow with his new wife, telling her the story. She listened, rapt, as he described how their ancestor had saved a girl from a snowdrift, how he had fallen in love with her instantly, how they had built something beautiful from tragedy and loss. "You think it is true?" she asked when he finished. That he really told her she had his heart just like that? "I do," he replied. "It is too good a story not to be true, and I understand it because when I met you I felt the same way. Like I had been looking for you my whole life without knowing it. Like you were the missing piece I needed to be whole." She smiled at him, the same smile Olivia had given Preston more than 100 years before, full of love and promise and the beginning of forever. They stood in the meadow, holding hands, surrounded by wildflowers, and made their own promises to each other, their own vows to build a love that would endure. And somewhere, if you believe in such things, two spirits watched from the hillside and smiled, content that their legacy continued, that their love had planted seeds that would bloom for generations. Preston and Olivia, together forever as they always promised, as they always knew they would be. The story ends where it began, in a meadow that has seen love and loss, joy and sorrow, the full spectrum of human experience. But most of all, it has seen love, the kind of love that transforms lives, that builds legacies, that endures beyond death itself. The kind of love that begins with a simple rescue and a few words spoken from the heart. "You have nothing," Preston had heard her say, this beautiful girl he had pulled from the snow. "You have my heart," he had replied, not knowing then that those words would echo through time, would become the foundation of a love story people would tell for more than a century. But the words were true then, and they remained true through all the years that followed, through all the challenges and triumphs, through all the joy and sorrow. Olivia had Preston's heart, and he had hers, and together they had everything that truly mattered. It is a simple story, really. Boy saves girl. Boy and girl fall in love. Boy and girl build a life together. But in its simplicity lies its power, its universality, its truth. Love does not have to be complicated to be profound. It just has to be real and committed and willing to weather whatever storms come. Preston and Olivia's storm came in the form of actual snow. A blizzard that nearly killed Olivia but instead brought her to the man who would become her world. Their love began in crisis, but was tested and proven in the long, ordinary days that followed, in the daily choice to cherish and honor each other, in the commitment to build something lasting. And they did build something lasting. Not just a family or a ranch or a legacy. though those are all important. They built a love that time could not diminish, that death could not end, that generations later still inspired people to believe in the possibility of finding their own forever person. The sun sets over the valley, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, the same colors Preston and Olivia watched together for 46 years. The ranch house lights come on, warm and welcoming, full of the descendants of the love that began in a snowdrift. The cattle low softly, settling for the night. The wind whispers through the grass, carrying stories of the past into the future. And on the hill, two stones stand side by side, marking the resting place of two people who found each other when all seemed lost, who chose each other every day, who loved each other completely and without reservation. The stones are weathered now, the carved words worn smooth by time and elements, but they are still readable, still telling their simple, powerful truth. Preston Vance, the stone reads, and beneath it, "Forever loved, forever together." Olivia Vance, the other stone, reads with the same words beneath, "Forever loved, forever together." Two lives lived fully and well. Two hearts joined in life and death. One story told and retold, never losing its power to move and inspire. This is what happens when a cowboy saves a girl from a snowdrift and tells her she has his heart. This is what happens when that girl takes that heart and treasures it, honors it, returns it measure for measure. This is what love looks like when it is real and true and lasting. The stars come out one by one, filling the sky with light. Somewhere, two souls walk together through fields of stars, hand in hand, still in love, still together, still grateful for the day a blizzard brought them into each other's lives. Their story is ended but also endless, a circle with no beginning and no end, just continuous love flowing forward through time. And in the valley below, life goes on, built on the foundation they laid, reaching toward the future while honoring the past. The Vance family continues, growing and changing but never forgetting where they came from, never forgetting the love story that started it all. This is how legends are made. Not from grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but from quiet moments of choice, from daily acts of love, from two people who looked at each other and said, "You are my home." Preston and Olivia made that choice in a snowstorm in 1878, and they kept making it every day until death finally parted them. And even death could not truly separate them, because love like theirs transcends the physical, lives on in memory and story, and the lives they created together. The Wild West was a hard place, unforgiving and dangerous, where survival took precedence over sentiment. But even there, especially there, love found a way. Two people found each other against all odds and built something beautiful. They proved that no matter how harsh the environment, how difficult the circumstances, love can flourish if it is tended and treasured. So the story ends, but the love continues, passed down through blood and story, inspiring each new generation to seek their own great love, to believe that somewhere out there is the person who will make them whole. Preston and Olivia's legacy is not just land or money or even family, though those things matter. Their true legacy is the belief in love itself, in the possibility of finding the one person who sees you truly and loves you completely. She had nothing, she said, standing in the doctor's parlor, newly orphaned and alone. "You have my heart," he replied, and meant it with every fiber of his being. Those words changed two lives, created a family, built a legend. Those words and the love that followed them are their true monument, more lasting than stone, more powerful than time. This is their story, complete and whole from beginning to end. From snowdrift to sunset, from first meeting to last breath, from crisis to contentment. It is a story of love, pure and simple, the kind of love that comes along once in a lifetime if you are very lucky. Preston and Olivia were lucky. They found each other in the worst of circumstances and made the very best of it. They loved each other well and true and forever. And that, in the end, is all that really matters. The end.